So the first week we talked about stress. Last week we talked about thoughts, and today we talk about time. Um, and they all fall under the same category of personal growth. So specifically with time, it can be like something like super complex and complicated. But tonight we're going to talk about how to manage our time. What ways are we spending, or are we spending our time, saving it, or investing our time into the things of God? So as we know, the Word of God was first written, or was written in a different language, and then translated into Greek, Hebrew, and into the languages that we speak today. So the word, or there's a Greek word that we get time from, and that word is kairos. And that time, or the definition of kairos, can be translated to time, but also opportunity. And these both can be described or defined as a measurable period in which something takes place, or a set of circumstances, time and opportunity. And as we read a couple verses tonight, we're going to see that in the verses, a common word that's mentioned is opportunity. So as we're talking about time, we're going to be seeing how the time that we've been given are a bunch of opportunities. So something that, so in the book that we're reading, there was an exercise in this chapter regarding time, and it asked the reader, the person that's reading the chapter, it asked them to reflect over the past week. Well, it's Wednesday today, so it asks you to reflect on the past few days and to document everything that you've done since waking up, whether that be like going on your phone, going to school, eating, to just document everything that you did during the week. And as you write down everything that you wrote, everything that you were doing during the week, you look at your list and you ask yourself if you're satisfied with everything that you did, if you're satisfied with how you divided up your time, how you spent your time. Well, with me, when I did this, I felt okay about the time that I was doing. I mean, I just stay at home most of the time now, so I don't really do too much. Yeah. So yeah, that was like an exercise that the book wanted the reader to do, and something that comes up a lot, like on my YouTube feed, is a lot of like motivational videos that are titled like "Stop wasting your time," or you need to cancel out all distractions. You need to be focused on like the career and the goals that you want to achieve. And a lot of these videos, the tone of the videos is like very hard work, no time for slacking off, no recreation, pretty much like work 7 days a week, and continue at that lifestyle until you achieve the goals that you want. But what we're going to learn tonight is that although it's good to work, it's not necessarily a healthy thing. It's not necessarily beneficial for us to constantly be working and balancing our time. Well, most of us already know that it's not good to just remain idle and not do anything, but it's just important or not doing anything is dangerous, but also overworking yourself and doing a lot, that could also be dangerous because it distracts you from your goals, from your priorities. So again, we ask ourselves, or you should ask yourselves, how am I currently spending my time? Am I spending my time just doing whatever I want? Am I saving my time for something in the future, or am I investing my time into something that's going to pay off in the future? And these three things are typically how we can categorize us spending our time. So what we're going to talk about tonight is how to redeem your time, how to redeem your opportunities, managing in a way, or redeeming your time and your opportunities, managing it is a way in which we can honor God. So if we go to the scriptures, Paul, as we know, he writes many different letters to different churches and to some people that he was mentoring. So something that I noticed in Paul is that he writes on two different occasions, one letter to the church of Ephesians and then one to the Colossians. He writes something similar to both of these churches, and he tells them to be careful how they live, to not spend or waste their time, but instead investing their time. And we see this in Ephesians chapter 5, verses 15 to 17. So Paul is telling us in this verse, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. Don't act thoughtlessly, but understand what the Lord wants you to do. So what Paul is telling us from these verses is that to be careful how we live our lives. He was saying that wise people, they make the most out of every opportunity. They make the most of the time that they're given. They also invest their time to know what God's will is, or to find the will of God. This is what wise people do. And he advises us to not live our lives thoughtlessly. This similar tone is echoed in Colossians chapter 4, verse 5, where again, he advises us to live carefully, to be careful how we walk and how we conduct ourselves. So it says in Colossians 4:5, he says, live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. Let's read verse 6 as well. So live wisely among those who are not believers and make the most of every opportunity. So not only is he telling us here to be careful how we live our lives, but he's giving us a reason why. And the reason why is in verse 6. Let your conversation be gracious and attractive so that you will have the right response for everyone. So he's advising us to live careful lives, to not live foolishly, because since we belong with Christ, we have a responsibility to reflect Christ at all times. So he's advising us to live carefully especially amongst people that don't believe in Christ, because they're going to be when they look at us, they should be looking at Jesus. And if we claim to belong to Christ and not reflect his love and not have the characteristics that he has, then they're going to be pushed away from wanting to put their faith in Jesus. So Paul tells us, or what we can conclude from these two verses in verses 5 and 6, is that the time that we're given, or time equals opportunity. The time that we have is opportunity for us not only to live carefully, but to reflect Jesus at all times, to share the gospel. It says to have the right response for everyone. So since time equals opportunity, to waste the time that we're given is to miss opportunities in serving the kingdom and sharing the gospel. Now, for us to learn how to, correctly manage the time that we're given, or for us to be able to redeem the time that God has given us to glorify and to honor him, we have to understand a few things about time. So the first thing that we should know about time is that time is a gift that's given to us. It's one of our most precious commodities, because as we know, time is something that we can never get back. We're brought into this world as infants. We come out of our mother's womb, and we continuously grow in this life. And we can never go back to that younger age. We can't go back and erase or correct some mistakes that we've had in the past. Time is our most precious commodity, and it's something that's given to us. It's a gift from God, because we are not able, or God put us in this earth. He put us in this earth to be alive in this specific time. We didn't choose to be born, but he made it so that we were able to be here, so that we can have a relationship with him and to carry out his purpose. So God is the creator. He's a being that existed out of time, and he created us to exist in this linear space. So when he created everything, when he created the heavens and the earth, and he created the animals and the first human beings, he created that. When he made all those things, that's when God created time, a linear chronological space. And again, as I mentioned before, we are here because God has given us the time. He's given us the opportunity to be alive. And it's nothing that we could ever do to make ourselves be born. It's through God's grace, through his divine purpose and will, is why we're here, why we're alive. Another thing that we can learn about time is that time is fixed. Again, as I mentioned, we didn't choose to be brought into this world. God specified a time so each and every one of us can be born. Some of us are born in the 21st century. Some of us are born in the 20th century. God ordained each and every one of us to be born at a specific time, a specific year, a specific month, because he has a divine purpose for our lives. He has a divine purpose and a specific time for everything. Like I mentioned, when we're born, he had a specific time when he was going to create man. He had a specific time when Jesus was going to come into the world. He first had to prepare a way for Jesus to come. And he also has a time when Jesus is going to come back. And only he knows when that time is going to occur. So time is given to us by God, but God's time is also fixed. He knows when everything is going to happen. He has a specific time for events to take place. And something that we can learn from the Word of God as well is that he's never late, he's never early. He arrives and completes his will just at the right time, at his perfect time. So all this to say that God is in charge of time. Since he lived outside of time, he created it when he created the heavens and the earth and everything else. He created time. Another thing that we can learn about time is that since God has given us time and opportunity, he's also given us a responsibility to manage it. It's a free gift that we receive from God, and the time that he has given us to be here on this earth, all of the work that we're going to be doing while we're here, it's all going to be judged, or everything that we're doing here will be judged at some day, at some time when he has specified. And all the work that we've been doing will be judged by fire. And if our work, or it will be judged by the fire to determine the value of our work. And this we can see in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 10 to 15. Since time is a gift from God, we will be judged how we use that time, by fire. So the word says, because of God's grace to me, this is Paul speaking, because of God's grace to me, I have laid the foundation like an expert builder. Now others are building on it. But whoever is building on this foundation must be very careful. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one that we already have, and that's Jesus Christ, our cornerstone. Anyone who builds on that foundation, on the foundation of Jesus, may use a variety of materials: gold, silver, jewels, wood, hay, or straw. But on the judgment day, fire will reveal what kind of work each builder has done. The fire will show if a person's work has any value. If the work survives, that builder will receive a reward. But if the work is burned up, the builder will suffer great loss. The builder will be saved, but like someone barely escaping through a wall of flames. So here we learn that all the work that we're doing here on earth, that we're building up, there's the imagery of building a house, right? Building the foundation being Jesus. What we learn from here is that if we waste our time building on poor foundations, if we waste our time building with the wrong materials, investing in the wrong materials, then all that work, when it goes through the fire, it's going to be burned. It's going to be wasted. But we're reassured that if we invest in good material, if we build upon the foundation that is Jesus, then we will be rewarded. That fire will go through the flame. That work will survive the flame. It will be rewarded. So this fire will reveal where we spend our priorities with the time we're given. Whatever we invest our time in, whatever we spend our time in, is a reflection of the priorities we have in our lives. And again, as I mentioned, the time that God has given us, He's given us a responsibility to manage it. And whatever we do with that time He's given us will be judged. Another thing we can learn about time is that our God-given time, the time He's given us, the opportunity He's given us, comes with a purpose, comes with a divine purpose. And there's always that $1 million question of like, that people come ask themselves at some point in their life, believers and non-believers alike, they ask themselves, what is my purpose? Why am I here on earth? What am I meant to do? Why am I alive? Or what should we do? Now, those of us who believe, the common purposes that we know is that we're made to glorify God. The Great Commission to go and make disciples of all nations. Those are things that we know is our purpose here on earth. That's like an overarching general purpose for all of us, for those that belong to Christ. But now there's also like individual purposes that God has for each and every one of us, and these are our callings. One of them could be serving one another with the gifts that God gives us. And we see this in 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 10. So again, we all have those of us that belong to Christ, we have a general purpose, and that's to glorify God, to make disciples of all nations. But we also have specific callings, specific purposes that God has for our lives. So one of them that we see in this verse, God has given each of you, each and every one of us, a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them to serve one another. So this is a purpose that God has ordained for us alike on an individual level. The gifts that he has given to each and every one of us, because we all have different gifts of the Spirit, he has told us that these gifts that we have, we are to use them to serve one another. And as I mentioned before, God's timing always comes with a purpose. So again, God could have made us, he could have chosen to make us be born in the 1800s, 1700s. He could have made us be born during the times when Christ was walking here on earth. But he chose us for a specific time to be born in this era, in this place, for his divine purpose. He also chose a specific time for when Jesus was going to be born into the world. And he also chose a specific time for when he was going to start his ministry. And as the Bible mentions, he started his ministry when he was 30 years old, and he conducted his ministry for 3 years. And something that I was thinking when I read that is that Jesus, his ministry lasted for 3 years, but those 3 years that he was out and healing people, preaching the word, and freeing people's minds and giving them the truth, in those 3 years, it made such a great impact that we still are talking about it today. So despite Jesus starting his ministry at 30 years old and only having lasted for 3 years, those 3 years marked a great impact in the lives of all of us 2,000 years later. So now that we know a few things about time, or now that we have an understanding about time, how do we make the most of every opportunity? And this is, I guess you could say, the key point that we're trying to get to in this topic about time. How do we make the most of every opportunity? How do we make the most of the time that God has given us? So the first thing that we can do to make the most of every opportunity is that we have to understand that our time here on earth is short, that it's precious. And if we don't know or realize that our time is short, something that we can do is that we can ask God to teach us how important the time he's given us really is. And we can see this in the book of Psalms, chapter 90, verse 12. And something that I recommend is for all of us on our own time to read this entire chapter, because it's a prayer that Moses is giving to God. And in the lead up to this verse, Moses is praying to God, and he's telling God who he is, that he made us from dust, he can turn us back into dust, that he raises people, that he brings people into this world like grass in the morning, and as the day goes on, that grass dries up and it becomes, it withers away. And he says in the same way that the grass grows in the morning and withers away later in the day, that's exactly how God can treat us, is that he brings us into this world, and he also determines the time when we're going to end up leaving this world. So Moses is telling God in his prayer of the great power that he has, how awesome he is, how he determines when we come into this world and when we leave this world. And something that he's asking for in his prayer is that he's asking him for wisdom. Because in this time, Moses is leading the Israelites, or he led them out of captivity, and now they're wandering in the wilderness. And so in his prayer, Moses is asking God for wisdom. He's saying that some people live to be 70 years old, and other people live to be 80 years old. So God determines when our time comes to an end here on earth. So again, if we don't understand how important the time we have is and how short it is, something that we can do is ask God to teach us how important it is. So he says in this verse, teach us to realize the brevity of life so that we may grow in wisdom. So in this verse, we see Moses asking God in his prayer to teach him and the rest of the Israelites the brevity of life, the importance of the time we have. And in here, it says that while we learn the importance of life, that is actually wisdom. And something that we can look back to in the first verses we opened up with in Ephesians and Colossians, Paul tells us to live wisely, to conduct ourselves carefully. So making the most of every opportunity that we have. So we see that managing our time is actually something that's wise. It leads to wisdom. Having wisdom means that you can be able to manage your time, the time that God has given us. The next thing we can do to manage our time better is, or the thing that we already know, you can waste your time by staying idle, but you can also waste your time by overworking, by constantly being busy. And what we can do to not let this be a hindrance in our walk with God is to follow his will. Now let's look at Psalms chapter 127, verses 1 to 2. So as we already know, we can waste our time by just staying idle and killing time, letting time go by. That's a very easy way to let time get wasted. But another way that we can waste time is by constantly overworking. Because if we constantly overworking, we might end up missing God's will and his purpose for our life. So all that work that we're going to end up doing, it's just going to go to waste. And we see that in these verses. Or it's confirmed here. So the word says, unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. Unless the Lord protects a city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. It is useless for you to work so hard from early morning. And so it is useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously waiting for food to eat. For God gives rest to his loved ones. We're confirmed here that if it's not God's will for us to do something and we end up doing it anyways, that time is just going to be wasted. It says, unless it's God's will for a house to be built, for him, or unless God builds a house. Can we go back to verse 1? Sorry, I forgot. Can we go back to verse 1, Gio? Gio? Verse 1. Thank you. So unless the Lord builds a house, the work of the builders is wasted. Unless he protects the city, guarding it with sentries will do no good. We're confirmed here that if it's not God's will for us to do something and we continue to do it, all that work and that effort that we put into doing that thing, it will just go to waste. It's useless for us to operate outside of God's will because he is the one who ends up providing for us. And we see that in verse 2, that it's useless for us to work so hard from early morning until late at night. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of these videos that say, cut out all the distractions from your life, how to achieve your goals, how to be motivated, all these motivational videos. The common theme between these videos is working 24/7, not having any rest time, and working until you achieve that goal. And even when you achieve that goal, continue working so you don't lose it, so that you maintain it. But we're told here that it's useless for us to work so hard, for us to work early morning and also until late at night. And if all we're doing is working so that we can have a better job, so we can have a good paying salary, so we can have food on our table and all these other things in this life, we're missing the point that God is the one that ends up providing these things for us. He gives us the strength so that we can work. He provides us with that job so that we can have the finances. He provides us with the finances to be able to pay for our car, our bills, our mortgages, for our families. God is the one that provides everything for us, our finances, our strength, all that we need to be sustained in this life. So if we're constantly overworking, if we're operating outside of His will, all that work that we're doing is just going to go to waste. So to better manage our time, we should follow His will. And also not go to the extremes of being idle and overworking yourself. Something that you can read in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 is that there's a time to do everything. There's a season for everything. A time to work, time to rest, a time to relax, to be joyful, a time to grieve. There's a time for us to do absolutely everything. So God does not want us to be idle, and He does not also want us to be overworking ourselves. Now, another thing is that when you think about better managing your time, you might think that you need to be more organized, that you need to make a list or start saying no to a bunch of things, start cutting a lot of things from your life. But something that I was reflecting and meditating on is that instead of saying no to all these things, instead of cutting these things out, what we should be saying instead of no is saying yes. And that's yes to God, yes to reading the Word, yes to prayer, yes to worship, yes to coming to the house of God. The more and more we say yes to God and to doing His will, all these other things that we used to do from the world that seem pleasing to us, it will just fade away. It will die out. It'll starve, and it'll just die out. Because something that we talked about last week, which was thoughts, is that if we constantly have something in our life, like a sin or an idol or something that we know is impeding us from that relationship with God, if we constantly think about that thing while not having done it yet, it can be like a temptation, for example. If we constantly thinking about it and keep telling ourselves, I'm not going to do it, I'm going to stay away from this, I'm not going to make this an idol in my life. If we constantly think about it, we fall into the danger of entertaining it more and more. And when we entertain that thing in our mind, we're more susceptible to fall into that temptation and end up sinning. So instead of saying no, instead of having that thing in our mind, we should just completely shift our focus and say yes to God. As I mentioned before, yes to reading the Word, yes to worship, yes to prayer time. Investing our time in God is a much better way, or it's a much more efficient way to just cut things from our life. So replacing the things of the world with the things that God wants us to do is a much more efficient way of managing our time. Now, the fourth and the last thing that we can learn about managing our time, as I mentioned before, in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, I'm not going to read it, but in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, we understand that there's a time and a season for everything. Since we know that there's a time and a season for everything, we can make a list of priorities. We should make a list of priorities. And hopefully, at the top of a priority, it should be God. We should have Him as the priority in our life. But something that I was reading or studying and preparing for this message is that while, yes, it is good to make a list of priorities or a list of to-dos or a to-do list, something or a different way that we should think about it, instead of making a priority list, or when we make a list, typically what happens is that we put a list of priorities, the thing that's most important, and we just go down the list. When we focus on the first one, we write it down and then we cross it off. So that means that we're done with that task, and then we go on to the next one. So when we cross it off, we kind of forget about the thing that we just finished, because obviously it's done, and we just keep going down the list. But the danger in doing that, when we're putting our priority with God, is that we could put Him first in our list, but if we simply see our relationship with God as just like a check mark and something that we have to do as an obligation, we're going to cross it off and say, okay, I spent my time with the Lord today. I read my Bible. I prayed, did my devotional. Now I'm going to go do these other things. And if we do that, we run risk of just completely forgetting about God for the entirety of the day. So instead of looking at it like as a list of to-dos, what we should do, instead of not only making God a priority in our life, we should make him the center of our life. And you can think about it like a web. You can put God and Jesus at the center of your life. And as we know, a web, it has many different or webbing connects a lot of things together. So it can be like circular, it can be many different shapes, but if we have him in the center, everything that we have going on in our lives, it will be connected and centered on him. So we're not going to be neglecting certain things in our life. We'll be, everything that was going on in our lives will be connected to one thing, and that would be God. So don't only make God a priority in your life. Don't only make him the top of your to-do list. We should make him the center of our life. So these are the key things that we need to know so that we can manage our time, manage the opportunity that God has given us. We have to know that, firstly, time is a gift that he has freely given to us. It's not anything that we could ever earn. We can't prolong our life. We can't determine we can't determine when we come into this world, and we can't add any more years to our life. That's only something that God has already determined for us. We know that time is fixed. He has a specific time and a specific event for things to occur in our lives. He has given us a responsibility to manage it. He has, with the time that he's given us a purpose. And to better manage it, we should understand the importance of this time we have here on earth. We should follow his will, seek him in everything that we do. We should say yes to the things of God, the things that are pleasing to him, fixing our eyes and our thoughts on him. And we should make him the center of our life. If we make him the center of our life, the focus of our life, everything else will come in succession. And we won't have to worry about the things that are saying in this verse. We won't have to worry anxiously about where we're going to get our food, where we're going to get our next paycheck. Because when we have him in focus, when we have our trust in him, and we know what he's doing in our lives, and when we focus on him, we will be filled with his peace. And the word reassures us that his peace is above all human understanding. So that is to conclude the topic of time. Okay. So now